Right, platypuses, today in English you're going to be doing some drama. Okay, so drama is when you act something out. And the learning question today is how can I use drama to retell the events of the Great Fire of London? Over the past week, you have been learning a lot about the Great Fire of London. You have done some research, you found the answers to your questions, you made a timeline, and hopefully you've just learned so much about it. So I'm going to, before I go over the success criteria, I'm going to move on to the next slide and we're going to talk about that first. So I have put some pictures up here and there are some questions and these will help you just have, these are just a bit of a recap of the main events of the Great Fire of London. And when you're doing your drama today, you're going to pick out the main events and you're going to be doing acting out these events, okay? So can you see the first picture? This one here, okay, where it says fire, fire. So the question is, where did the fire start and how did the fire start? So have a little think about it. Look at the picture. Think about where it started, how it started, who started it. Okay, did you have a think about that? So we know that the Great Fire of London started in a bakery on Pudding Lane. And the name of the person who started the fire was Thomas Fariner because he forgot to put out the fire in his oven. And then a spark flew onto the floor and set everything alight. And then if you have a look at the next picture here, why did the fire spread so quickly? Now we know that the fire did spread very quickly. Okay, can you remember the reasons why it spread so quickly? Have a think about it. Have a think about what you've learned. Okay. Now we know that the Great Fire of London spread so quickly because, well, first of all, there was very strong wind, um, and that's what helped to spread the fire from house to house or building to building. Okay. And also, do you remember what the houses were made out of during the time of the Great Fire of London? They were made out of wood. So we know that wood burns easily, so the fire spread very quickly. Can you think of other reasons? There were some other reasons as well why the fire spread so quickly. Now, let's have a look. So let's go on to this picture here, okay? So have a look. These people are trying to escape. How did they escape? What can you see in the picture? Okay, how did people escape? They had to escape from their houses because they were on fire. They were all burning. So they had to make sure they escaped and went to safety. Um, People escaped on boats. Can you see? Can you remember the name of the river? It's the River Thames. So people escaped on boats from the River Thames and they had to get away from the fire. Okay. Um, some people also tried to escape in carts. Do you remember when we looked at the picture of the carts and horses? Do you remember what happened to the carts and horses though? The carts were banned, okay, because they were made out of wood, and we know that wood burns easily. Now, some people, if you look at the next picture here, can you see these people here? Okay, these people are also trying to stay safe, okay, and some people tried to shelter in churches and they tried to take as many of their belongings as possible, okay, because they knew that their house would probably burn down and there would not be anything left, okay, and they hoped that the churches where they tried to keep safe would keep them safe. They would keep them safe because the walls were made of stone, okay, and we know that stone does not burn so easily as wood, so that's where they went, okay, but unfortunately lots of the churches did actually burn down. So let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so do you remember what they used to try to put out the fire? So these three pictures here are people fighting the fire. Can you see? Now, the first picture, can you see what they used? Okay, they used leather buckets. They went to the River Thames, they filled up the buckets with water, and they tried to put the fire out. But did it help? Was that enough water to put out the fire. Okay, you know it wasn't, okay? They needed a lot more water to do that. And you know that at the time of the Great Fire of London, they didn't actually have a fire brigade. Now, can you see the second picture here? Can you see what they're doing? Now, they used fire hooks to pull down the buildings. And what that was going to do, so when they pulled down the buildings, they hoped it would make a fire break and that would stop the fire from spreading. But unfortunately, it didn't stop it from spreading, and actually, the fire just jumped over the break and went and spread then to the next houses. Can you see here in the next picture? What is this? What's happening in this picture here? Okay. Do you remember what the king ordered the soldiers to do? Okay, the king ordered his soldiers to do something. He ordered the soldiers to use gunpowder to blow up the houses again to make a fire break. Okay, and this did actually help with stopping the fire from spreading. Now, can you remember? Let's go to the next one. Can you remember how the fire did actually stop? Now, this is a picture here of. Can you see? It is a picture of the great, no, not the Great Fire of London. It's a picture of St. Paul's Cathedral, okay? And I think you've probably already learnt that that St. Paul's Cathedral burnt down in the Great Fire of London, and St. Paul's Cathedral that is now in London actually is the new one because it had to be rebuilt. Okay. Can you remember how the fire stopped? How did the fire stop in the end? Can you remember? Do you remember the wind died down? So that actually helped to stop spreading the fire. Okay, so then it was able to put the fire under. The fire was able to get under control. Now let's have a look at this last one here. So this says London in ruins. Can you see in the background here all of these houses and buildings that were burnt down in the fire? London was in ruins because it had been destroyed by the huge fire. What did the people do after the fire? Can you see in the picture what they are doing? Where did they go? They didn't have any houses because their houses burnt down. So actually, many people had to stay in tents because they didn't have a house to live in. Okay, and this was just outside of London, so where there was no fire. Okay, and unfortunately, there were a few people that died, but actually during this huge fire, only I think 6 people died. So actually, it really wasn't that many when you think about how huge the fire was. So most people did manage to get to safety. Right, so I hope that helped you recap on the different events of the Great Fire of London. When I finish talking, this PowerPoint will be saved so that you can go back and look at the pictures, and this will help you when you're acting out your drama. So I'm going to go back to the first slide with the success criteria. So what you're going to do today is you're going to act out some short scenes of the Great Fire of London. So for example, you might decide to act out the first part. It might be that you pretend that you are Thomas Fariner and you've gone to bed, so you put the fire, you've finished your work and you're so tired that you've forgotten to put the fire out, but you didn't realise, so you went straight to bed. And then in the middle of actually it was early in the morning, wasn't it? Very early Sunday morning, he realised that there was a fire. Okay, you might be in bed and you might smell fire, and you are going to act as if you are Thomas Fariner waking up to see this fire, and you are escaping from the bakery. Okay, now you might act out parts of people escaping. So you could imagine that you are one of these people and you are trying to get all of your belongings and you are trying to get to safety away from the fire. So you are leaving your house. Okay, and then let's have a look here. You could act out You could imagine that you are one of the people and you are trying to put the fire out. So you could be using fire hooks to pull down the houses, but you're realizing it's not really working. You could be imagine that you are going to the River Thames and you are filling up your bucket with water to try and put the fire out. Now, so I'm going to go back to this slide again. So when you're acting out these short scenes, I want you to think about how your character might feel, what your character could see or hear or smell. So using your senses when you are acting out the scene. Now, I want you to also think about which historical or descriptive words might go with this scene. So when I talk about this, I'm talking about things like fire hook. That's what they used at the time of the Great Fire of London to put out the fire, and they used leather buckets. So try when you're acting it out, because obviously when you're acting it out, you need to speak as well. So you need to act and you need to talk. So it's a really good idea to use those words. And also you might have some description like a blazing fire, huge blazing fire. Okay, so try to make it as descriptive as possible. Now, you don't need to write anything today for your work. You are doing acting, you're using drama. So if it would be lovely if you could share some of your work with me, and the way you can do that is by either sending me a video or you can send me a photo of you acting at these parts. Okay, so you could do this with your family. You could act it out, and you could kind of like put on a show, and you could actually just retell the events by doing this for your family. Okay, so I can't wait to see your drama today. Okay, so good luck.